Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about Enna Burning, the second book in the Books of Bayern series by Shannon Hale. So as the second book in the series, it talks about a lot of the same characters as the first book does. For instance, you can see the cover, that is actually Enna, who is Annie from Goose Girl, Annie's best friend in the first book. And so, as you can see, the theme in this book is fire, and throughout the whole entire series, it's all about the elements. Air, lost my train of thought. Air, fire, water, and I'm trying to remember, people speaking. So, it's all about these different abilities or languages that you can learn and talk to. Like, you can learn how to talk to fire. It's not so much as controlling as being able to talk to it and tell it what you want it to do. So, in Enna Burning, it's about Enna and how she learns to control fire. Enna Burning is actually a very romantic book. I mean, in all the books there's romance, but in this one there is a strong romance between her, another guy, and Finn, who is the guy who helped Annie in the first book. So, open it up, it says, "Praise for Enna Burning. This novel's pulsing heart lies in rich writing and sharply drawn characters." And then someone else says, "Powerful and romantic." So, it's a good romance series. And so then, of course, we come back to the map, which is Kildenry, where Annie lives, and Bayern, where she now resides with her. I don't remember if they have gotten married. They did get married. Annie and Garrick have gotten married by this point in time, and so now she's living with him here in Bayern. So if we turn the page again, we go to the prologue, and it talks about, the prologue talks about a woman who originally had this vellum, this piece of paper, that talked about how to learn the language of fire. And so it talks about how it falls into Enna. I'm just going to talk because it's a really long book. It's not like super long, but it is, let's see, it's 317 pages. So not super duper long, but it's a good sized book. And it starts with her brother, Lester. I think his name's Lester. Just got to check because I don't want to mix that up. Leifer? However you pronounce that name. Leifer? It talks about her brother Leifer, and he actually learns fire first, and he goes into battle using it, because at this point in time, this place called Tira is at war with them. So Tira's at war with them, and her brother goes and he kills a bunch of soldiers by lighting them on fire, which, yes, she doesn't do a lot of details, but Leifer does too much, and he ends up burning himself in the process. Leifer dies, Enna finds the vellum, and she learns fire too. And so she practices it, and she practices it, and she gets the hang of it, and she learns how to control it. But the thing about all of these languages is, like I said, you don't control them. If you're not careful, they can overwhelm you and control you. Because learning the language of something means that you're also giving them a hold into yourself. And in this book, Annie's also having a hard time controlling wind, because it's basically like it's hammering at her mind and making it so that it's hard for her to hear anything but everything that the wind's touched, because it tells her everything, someone walking off the path, a bird, a feather drops to the ground, so on and so forth, because wind feels everything, and so in return relays it to her, so she has a hard time sleeping. For Enna, it's basically that the fire, she can feel the heat. She basically can take the heat of any object, any living object, and basically take it into her body and then send it out and ignite it into fire, which is definitely a little different. But the problem with her brother was that he did too much, and he basically ended up burning himself from the inside out because when you hold that heat in, it's got to go somewhere or it'll kill you. And so Enna ends up going to the castle, and she's one of Annie's ladies' maids, I think is how you say that. And she works for her for a while, and then an ambassador, I think that's what they're called, came over to talk to Bayern about, surrender and all that, which of course they won't do. And so, let me see if I can find that spot. It's here that it was a war council with Tira. And then it goes on and talks about what they talk about for war. And Garrick says, I think it wise to remember that this is not just an issue of land, it's people. The people you attacked in those villages and towns are Bayern. For now, said Theoden, once they were Tyrion, they can be again. So basically they go back and forth about land and the people, because Tyrion wants more land that was originally overtaken by Bayern and has become Bayern now, but basically Tyrion wants it back. And in this point in time, the king has died. He fell in the same battle as Leifr, Enna's brother, and so Garrick is now king. And Enna knows fire, and so because the fire is pressing in on her and she can feel the heat, she has to go and relieve some of that pressure sometimes. So basically go and set fire to something. So for a while she goes out and she attacks Tyrion camps and lights them on fire. And Issa confronts her about it one time, and it ends up in a scuffle, which later on gets resolved, but Enna goes back out and she ends up getting captured by this person, this man, he's a people speaker, and his name is, let's see if I can find it, Silef. So, Silef is his name, and because he's a people speaker, people can't help but trust him, and so he is the one that has Enna captured, but he says that it was all his officer of higher ranks idea, and that he was forced to do it and so on, and they keep her from lighting things on fire with this drug called, I think it's called King's Tongue? Let me real quick look at this. King's Tongue, and it slows your mind and weakens your body, and if you do it for long enough, the damage can be permanent. And so it's not a very good tasting thing, but it basically makes so that you can't think and you can't move very well, and so they use it to keep her subdued so she can't light fire to anything. And he manipulates her for a really long time, and he does, he goes at night, he'll lay next to her and sometimes sleep with her for a little while and then leave to go back to his duties, just be there to pretend to be a comfort so that she would trust him. And he does eventually gain her trust, but she grows weary of being forced to stay in the tent all the time, and so she ends up learning the truth about him, because she won't fight against her country, and so eventually in the end she escapes, which is hard for her because they capture Razzo, her best friend, and Finn, who she's in love with, but she doesn't quite know her feelings for him at the time. So she goes and eventually she escapes with help from Issy, or Annie as she's known, because she goes into the camp, she cuts her hair, goes into the camp, and she pretends to be Tyrion, and she tells them all stories and brings them wine so that they get basically drunk, and Enna's able to escape and leave. But after that she ends up going and fighting the Tyrion, who are fighting the Bayern, and she kills most of them, but she damages herself really badly during that encounter, and she's dying from a fever and from the fire. And so Issy takes her to this place called... They're on their journey, before I tell you where they're going. Sylph finds Enna and Issy, and he threatens her and tries to kill her, and he, well, he doesn't try to kill her, he tries to sway her to his side, and threatening Issy at the same time, or Annie, and, she doesn't believe him at all, and so she ends up overpowering him, and she ends up, because he doesn't want her killed, he just wants to bring her back to his side so that she'll burn for Tyrion. And Finn ends up coming into camp. He followed Enna and Issy, even though he wasn't supposed to. And so he follows them, and he goes and attacks Sylph and frees Enna, and Sylph's own men end up killing him. Because they don't like what he's doing, they don't like the idea of the Fire Witch, and they do not like the idea of their captain, you know, seducing her and all that. So they end up killing him during the scuffle after Finn knocks him over and gets him out of Enna's way. So, because they say, "We should have done that weeks ago," said a low-voiced soldier, receiving his dagger back from Pole. "Maybe it'll let us back into Ingriddan with the captain dead," said another. Because they were all dismissed from their positions because they failed to turn Enna to their side when Sylph said that he could turn her to their side and make her burn for them, and he couldn't, and so they were all dismissed. And so that's why they were going back to capture her and make her work for them so that they would get their positions back, which obviously didn't work. So they go to part of the land that has Roga Tada Rook, this community of fire worshippers. So they're fire worshippers, and they learn how to, some of them learn how to control fire, and they know about that. So but the thing is that they learn. So he says, yes, he says he too can pull fire from air, but he won't do it casually. It's not for humans to play like creators. So basically they know it, but they don't use it very much. So they basically, how do I explain this? For every language that you learn, you need to have balance. You need to have something that will balance it out. And for the fire worshippers, they have water that they also learn. They learn how to speak water, and so because they know both water and fire, water pushes the fire back, and the fire burns the water, so they're always at a constant battle, but it's balanced, because neither is winning and neither is losing. And the same for Issy needs to be done, because she is overwhelmed with air. And so they were going to burn the word of fire out of Enna's mouth by placing hot coals on her tongue, but it could very well kill her and make it so, you know, she can't speak and anything else. And so, but they have to do it because she goes back into a fever, and they determine that if she goes to sleep again, she will die. And so they go up to the platform and are about to do it when, I can't remember if it's Finn or if it's Issy. Okay, so it was one of the fire worshippers who had the idea, because Issy during their journey would use her air or her wind speaking to help Enna against fire. She would basically use the wind to cool Enna down so that she wasn't quite so hot. And so they have another suggestion to try and blow the fire out of Enna. Basically, use so much wind that it will push the knowledge of the fire out of Enna. And so they try that, but Enna gets scared and she can't seem to let go of the fire because it's become a part of her. And she feels like, she says, over here she says, if it leaves me, I'll die, she thought, and she held on tighter. So, basically, she can't let it go, and they talk for a while, and so then Enna comes up with the idea that she can teach Issy fire, because she feels really bad for Issy and doesn't think that there's any hope left for her. And Issy's pregnant, which Enna finds out while they're at the temple, like really pregnant, almost ready to give birth. She's several months along, and so she has a hard time walking up the stairs. And so Enna wants to teach Issy fire, so that maybe it can push the air back and keep it at bay, you know, like the water and the fire balance thing. So she suggests that to Issy, and Issy agrees, and then she also suggests teaching it to Enna. So they both try and teach people. Enna was about to do it to Issy, and then the fire worshipper suggested that Issy also teach Enna it, so that it could work both ways. And so they both learn, and they both do it, and for a while it doesn't seem to be working, but then they both learn it. And afterwards, they're both startled because they can't feel, Enna can't feel the heat as much, and Issy can't feel the wind as much, and so, but it's still there if they call for it, it's just not constantly nagging and pressing in on them. And so through that, there's balance. And so because of that, they're both stronger for it, and now they both know 2 languages, both air and fire. And so they go home, and they almost make it all the way, and they end up stopping at, let's see, so they make it almost all the way back, but they have to stop in a passing village just outside the forest where Enna lives. 2 days ride from the capital, and Issy was about to pop. So she goes into the nearest cottage, and they send for Garrick, and she ends up having a beautiful baby boy. And Enna isn't disgraced like she thought she would be, so she ends up getting exalted, and Issa has a beautiful baby boy, and Garrett comes in time, and he is able to see the baby, and they name him Tuscan after Issy's father. And Issy said that if it had been a girl, they would have named her Enna Isily. And so Enna said that there would be others. And Garrick is happy. So in the end, they end up having the baby, and everything is right with the world. And Enna and Finn are back together again, and, you know, they actually love each other, and they're working on their romance more. It's a good book. It's a really good book. I wouldn't have your younger children read it just because of the fire and the battles fought, as well as some of the matters with the manipulation that Siliph does to Enna. So I actually didn't like this one as much as the other books in the series, just because I preferred the other elements in the other books and the other characters more. I still like this book, which is why I have it. But for me, the order would be Goose Girl, Forestborn, River Secrets, and Enna Burning, in that order. And so I just enjoyed the other elements a lot more. Wind is my favorite element, then usually plants or water, so those are just my favorite elements out of that, and so that had some factors in it, but in the end it all ends up turning out. But it's a really good book to read. It's on the back it said, each time she contemplated fire, she felt sure that she could learn it, and felt a place inside her, a place in her chest, yawned eagerly. Enna's brother Leifur has found the secret to an extraordinary power, to make fire without a spark. He can use the ability for good. if he learns to control it. But Enna can't decide if it's a power she wants for herself, or one that should be extinguished forever. When their home country of Bayern goes to war, the choice becomes unbearable. Enna never imagined the warm, life-giving energy of fire could destroy anything she loves, but now she must try to save Bayern and herself before fire consumes her entirely. So, yeah, that's the back, and it's a really good book. It was just very strong. And the next book in the series that we'll be talking about is River Secrets. So, yeah, that's the end of this video. Thank you for watching and listening, and hope you like it, and yeah.